hospitality. I will hasten to say, too, just because I have this subject and just because I have some thoughts to share doesn't mean that I have the monopoly on hospitality and know how it's done. But I will say, by this study, I have learned some things and realize there's been many times I fell short of hospitality. I feel, there's different times when you have opportunities for hospitality and then that's behind you and you look back and you say, well, why in the world did we do it that way, or why didn't I make sure that this was taken care of, or something like that? So this subject was good for me, and I don't know, I know the program committee and the food committee are both, same person as both of those. I had this topic tonight, and we was also hostess today, so I don't know if there was something rigged with that or not, but I doubt it. But anyway, it gave us a good opportunity to practice and put these things to practice that we want to look at here tonight. The fellowship of hospitality. Hospitality is I want to give some definitions on that. Love and appreciation for others. And I think the word love ties in very closely here when we think of being hospitable to others, and expressions of love comes in here very closely. Hospitable, welcome, warmth, kindness, friendliness, neighborliness, and a lot of other things can be put in there. And I know a lot of things go through your mind when we think of being hospitable, making guests feel at home when they come over, and not that they wish they were at home, but make them feel welcome, and know everyone here has had an opportunity to exercise hospitality. I know we've all received hospitality from other people, so this is something that we experience a lot of. And there's some things that'll come out in here, some different experiences that we've had, and examples, and maybe some instances along the way. And I hope I don't bore you with examples that come from our family, but I don't live with another family, so this is who I live with, and so that's where you're going to hear from, because I don't know what other people's experiences are. And I'll share some of those tonight. The word hospitality is wedged between two words, that being hospice and hospital. And hospice, we think of that as being a place of shelter, and hospital is a place of healing. And we offer, when we think of hospitality, we offer both of those. We offer a place of shelter. We offer for somebody a place to stay. We also offer healing, whether it's listening to somebody, helping somebody through different situations, whatever it may be, giving somebody some food or whatever the case may be. All those things are opportunities we have of being hospitable. And being hospitable does not have to be at our house. It doesn't have to be around our table. It can be in different settings, different situations, different opportunities. It can be telling somebody, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee. Enjoy somebody else's friendship. One of the things that come to my mind, I don't even know if I was assigned this topic at this point when this happened, but I thought about it later. Me and one of the boys was getting breakfast in town here, and there was a fellow in there already, was in the middle of his breakfast, and we went in there and ordered. He said, hey, why don't you all sit down and have breakfast with me? And that was something that, so many times when we go into a place like that, well, we got our own thing going on. We're just going to sit over here and we'll say hey to him and sit down. But I was really impressed that he did that. He said, why don't you guys sit down and have breakfast? He enjoyed visiting with us and taking an interest in what we was doing, and that's something that we learned by now. Some of the things that we talk about at home that is one of our weaknesses, I might say, that we have to try to overcome when we have people over. And I won't lay everything out about the things that we have to work on at home, but some of the things when it comes to being hospitable, when you have people around your table that have different walks of life, different interests in life, talk of things that are of general interest to everybody. And I guess that was one of the things when that guy told us to sit down and have breakfast with, and he was interested in what we were doing that day. He asked about our family. He asked about different things. So that's been something I've had to struggle with and work on. We're interested in what is involved in our life, whether it's, the customers that we have, but that's not of general interest to other people. They don't care what we've done today. They don't care. No, I shouldn't say they don't care, but that's not as interesting to them as what it is to me. So it's been something for us to work on, is to talk of subjects that are of general interest to other people. That's just one of the things that come to my mind when I was thinking about this, is to take an interest in other people and draw them into your life, and take an interest in what they have going on. An example that we experienced a number of years ago, we was staying overnight at a couple's house, and we got there about bedtime. They were still up to welcome us there, kind gesture. And we walked in there, and they'd done the friendly thing of offering us a drink, which is a kind thing to do, and we accepted that. And she said, "Help yourselves, the cup's above the sink." And we thought about that a lot of times, and I know she meant well. She meant to take care of us, but I think hospitality goes a little farther than that, maybe. But I'm not condemning them for that at all. She said, "Help yourself to anything you need, just don't use my toothbrush." So I think she meant well in doing that, but it just stood out to us to would you like a drink? Well, yeah, sure, we'll take one. Well, help yourself, the cup's above the sink, in the cupboard above the sink. So anyway, we learned some things along the way as we experienced those things. The secret to making guests feel comfortable is more about the condition of your heart than the condition of your home. And so many times, and I know the lady folks are very concerned about appearance, and I don't fault them for that at all. But being hospitable is not about the tip-top shape of the house. It's not about the very clean windows. It's not about the vacuum carpet or the mop floors. But it's more about the condition of your heart, and it comes back to the fact of a love for others, love and appreciation. When we have that love for others, we're going to want to show that hospitality, regardless of the crumbs that are on the floor, regardless of the fingerprints that are on the windows or on the door. And that's a good reminder for me, because we don't have to have everything in top-notch shape to be hospitable. Like I said before, it can be exercised more than at home. It can be other instances as well. Another example that we had that I have often thought about, when we visited Arcadia Church sometime back, and the usher that was there that Sunday, it's always a trepidatious thing when you go to a strange church. You don't know, you just hate to do it, I guess you might say. You just don't know who you're going to see or how they're going to act, and you feel like you're going to stand off in the corner somewhere. And anyway, he came out, the usher was there that Sunday. We came after Sunday school. He came out in the parking lot and welcomed us into church and helped us to find a place to sit. And that meant so much, because it helped bridge that gap of feeling like a fish out of water at a strange church. I think it was the first time we were there. But I thought a lot about that. So hospitality can be practiced anywhere. It can be practiced at home. It can be practiced at work. It can be practiced at church. And those things go a long ways. All right, one of the scriptures I was given an outline with that, and I built some of this topic around that somewhat, and I used some of the scriptures out of that. I want to look at Genesis chapter 18, verses 1 through 16. This is a good example here of hospitality in action, and I think it can relate to how we should respond to opportunities for opportunities for hospitality also. Genesis 18, 1 through 16. And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, He ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts, after that ye shall pass on. For therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, So do as thou hast said. And Abraham hastened unto the tent unto Sarah, and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, make cakes on the hearth. And Abraham ran unto the herd, and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hasted to dress it. And he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. And they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abram and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also. And the Lord said unto Abram, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed I will return to thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh. And the men rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom, and Abram went with them to bring them on the way. And I wouldn't have to read all that incident, but I wanted the verse 16 to go with that. But I was impressed with the fact, and I think it applies, it says, when he saw them, he lifted up his eyes and saw them. He ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground, and said, My Lord, found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, and come in. In other words, he went out to meet him, and I think that makes application what I was talking about, the gentleman at Arcadia that come out to meet us in the parking lot. When we have visitors or company over, visitors over, I don't think that I have to be treated that way. I'm just saying I think it's a good gesture when we express hospitality. Go to the door, welcome them in. I don't think we have to walk to the end of the drive when they're coming down the road, but welcome them in, make them feel like you're really tickled to death to have him there. Make him feel welcome. And that's what he did here. It says he went out and met them and told them to come in. And then he went to all this extent. He went to all this, they made food. They didn't just pour him a glass of water and it was over. But he did, took several steps here to provide for them. And it says, Abram ran into the herd and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it to the young man, and he hasted in to dress it. And he gave of the good things that they had. He didn't, and that's one of the things I want to touch on a little bit later on, is the fact of how stewardship can enter into hospitality too. We've been blessed with a lot, and I think we're expected to share it. It's not ours. We may sometimes feel like, we worked hard for these things. I just don't want to just give it away. Then I won't have any left. Well, that's not what God expects. We're to be stewards of what He's given us and to share. And that's what happened here. He shared with the good part of what he had. Good example for us. Took out of his herd to feed them. He stayed with them while they ate. He was attentive to his guests. And then in verse 16 it says, at the end there, Abram went with them to bring them on the way. He did not left them sitting, hang out there to dry, more or less, to be on their own, but he was there taking care of their needs. Also, let's look at 1 Samuel 9:22 through 24. I think this is another example I had referenced here. Yeah, this is an example here of Samuel's expression of hospitality. And Samuel took 22 through 24, and Samuel took Saul and his servant and brought them into the parlor and made them sit in the chiefest place among them that were bidden, which were about 30 persons. And Samuel said unto the cook, Bring the portion which I gave thee, of which I said unto thee, set it by thee. And the cook took up the shoulder, and that which was upon it, set it before Saul. And Samuel said, Behold, that which is left. Set it before thee, and eat. For unto this time hath it been kept for thee, since I said, I have invited the people. So Saul did eat with Samuel that day. Expression of hospitality. He gave what he had to Saul. Hospitality is more than a talent. It's a gift of the Holy Spirit. I think it's something that we as God's people, God's children, Christians, we are expected to have this virtue and to share those things that God has given us in a hospitable way. Hospitality, a lot of times we think hospitality is more, I guess, maybe it's just in my mind. Maybe it's a lot of times we think of being hospitable. We think it's a little bit more on the ladies' turf. That's all in her ballpark, and she provides the food and she cleans the house, and that's how hospitality happens. But I think it's as men, we need to sit up and pay attention. It's as much or more on our part for being hospitable, making a place for that to happen, providing for that, making sure the necessary things are there for it to happen, and go out of our way and set an example to our families. And that's the other thing I wanted to say too. Maybe the young people, maybe the children sit here and say, well, this thing on hospitality don't really apply because I'm not married and I don't have a family, and I don't have a home, and it don't really apply to me. But it starts when we're little. And I think it's up to us parents to lead that example. They can look to us and see that we're hospitable or that we're not. And these little ones can, we have visitors here at church that have little children that like to go to Sunday school, and you guys can help them feel like they want to go to Sunday school. Young people visit here, visit with them, help them have an enjoyable time here. So I think hospitality enters all ages and walks of life that we can be involved in. So it's not just for moms and dads that have homes and family to obviously the older you get and you have more responsibilities, you have much more opportunities to do that. Hospitality, I never really thought about it this way until I was looking at these two different words. We think of hospitality, we also talk about entertaining guests, and there's a difference. And I didn't think about it so much until I looked at these definitions. When we entertain somebody or we entertain guests, it's more about wanting to impress you with what I can do to accommodate you. It's more about, if that makes sense to you anyway. And when we think of hospitality, it puts people before things, but people ahead of anything else. What I am is not important. What I have is not important. But what the other person is to me is what's important. What I have is not mine. It's a gift, and we want to use it as desired. And that's where I want to bring in stewardship. It's not what we have is what I have to impress others, but it's an interest to serve others with those things. Anyway, just a little bit on that. When we think of hospitality, I mentioned a little bit there about entertaining or being hospitable, and we can be hospitable no matter what we have, no matter what facility we have, no matter what house we have, no matter what place we have. We can be hospitable, and I was made aware of that. Sometimes we think that everything has to be, all our ducks have to be in a row, and we have to make sure everything's in line, and now we can have somebody over. And I know there's different circumstances and situations that hinders some of those things sometimes, but I think there's a balance there of making sure everything is just perfect. We was in Bahamas a couple years ago and was not expecting to see any people that would be interested in having us over, connections with us. And we met them one day, and he was so excited to see us because it was another conservative family there in that area there. They didn't see much of those type of people. And we got home, and he called and he said, "Hey, we would like to have you come over for supper." I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I wasn't know if we was up to all this." We had just experienced some food from Bahamas there, and we had some conch salad. And I'm like, "What in the world are we going to do if we have conch salad at this guy's place? I don't know what in the world we're going to do with that." We hem-hawed around for a while. We really couldn't think of a good excuse not to go. So we kept our fingers crossed and we went. And we had a good time. And that house was a small house, and they had, I don't know how many children they had, but they had a buku of children around there. And the place barely accommodated that many people. And they didn't even have enough chairs for everybody to sit on. The husband and wife shared a chair. It was interesting, but guess what? It did not matter what they did, the lack of things that they had, and they provided very well for us. We had a good meal, and we visited, and it was an enjoyable time. So it was a good experience for hospitality because they shared what they had, and they enjoyed having us there, and I did not regret at all that we went. It was very enjoyable. Let's look at some other things here. Hospitality in the early church. Acts 10, verse 6. It was a help to the apostles. Acts 10, verse 6. He lodgeth with one Simon a tanner, whose house is by the seaside, and he shall tell thee what thou oughtest to do. Here he was lodging here with one Simon a tanner. And down in verse 23, then called he them in and lodged them, and on the morrow Peter went away with them, and certain brethren from Joppa accompanied them. So a couple of these verses here are just about lodging these apostles along the way, and it was a help to them that they extended this facilities to them so they'd have a place to stay. And also Acts 16:15. And when she was baptized in her household, she besought us, saying, If ye have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come into my house and abide there. And she constrained us. She invited them to come in to her house and abide there, inviting people over. Let's not be bashful about that. She begged for Paul and Silas to stay, and she, more or less, you might say, laid out the welcome mat for them. Also, 3 John verses 1 through 8. It was an aid to evangelism. John 1 through 8. The elder unto the well-beloved Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospers. For I rejoice greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, even as thou walkest in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. Beloved, thou doest faithfully whatsoever thou doest to the brethren and to strangers, which have borne witness of thy charity before the church, whom I thou bring forward on their journey after a godly sort. Thou shalt do well, because that for his name's sake they went forth, taking nothing of the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such, that we might be fellow helpers to the truth. Here it says, we therefore ought to receive such, that we might be fellow helpers to the truth. Their hospitality was an aid to evangelism here. I'm going to read a few more scriptures here. Romans 12, verse 13. Familiar verse. It's showing us, giving us instructions here how to live, and it's one of the familiar verses that we think about when we think about hospitality. Distributing to the necessity of saints, given to hospitality. And that's one of the things, I think I had a point here on that, maybe we'll come to it later. When we think of hospitality, we sometimes focus on possibly our neighbors, showing hospitality to them, or people that may come by our place, showing hospitality to them. But I think it also, we do well to remember our church family and maintain hospitality, show hospitality one to another. That builds us up. That's the encouragement that we need as we fellowship together, as we work together, relate together. So I don't think these things are obsolete, should not be obsolete from our church family, that we do this among ourselves as well. Hospitality is a qualifying virtue, and there's some verses here, and it speaks of, let's turn to 1 Timothy 3:2. Speaks of a virtue, I think it's speaking expressly to church leaders, but I want to hasten, it speaks about that, but I think it's also does not exclude the rest of us from having this virtue as well. 1 Timothy 3, verse 2. It's talking about a bishop here. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. It's a virtue that is to be found in a church leader. Also 1 Timothy 5:10. Well reported of for good works, if she have brought up children, if she have lodged strangers, if she have washed the saints' feet, if she have relieve the afflicted, if she have diligently followed every good work. And verse 9 before that, I should have read that, will not a widow be taken into the number under 60 years old, having been the wife of one man, well reported of for good works, and it goes on. Kind deeds as a qualifying virtue. Also, Titus 1:8. I'm going to read verse 7 with that. For a bishop must be blameless as a steward of God, not self-willed, not soon angry, not given to wine, no striker, not given to filthy lucre, but a lover of hospitality, a lover of good men, sober, just, holy, and temperate. It goes on there, but we're just looking at hospitality. Here again it mentions a bishop, but I think we can take well to desire that virtue also, and to come up to that measure as well. A little bit more practical side of it, our practice of hospitality. God has given us, we mentioned before about stewardship, God has given us the resources to meet others' needs, and I think God expects us to use those things that He gives us to share and meet other people's needs. A while back we had, I don't know if it was in our Sunday school lesson or if it was something that was shared in a message or whatever here, but we have the familiar story of feeding the 5,000 from that boy's lunch, and he gave his lunch willingly, and God provided for everybody to be fed, but that's not where the story stopped. He had to have somebody to get that food out, and that's where God's people come into play. They needed the one to be to get that stuff distributed, and I think that applies to us today too, that God gives us blessings. He provides for our needs very well. We're a blessed people, but that's not where it stops. He expects us to share that, spread it out, and to share it with others. It's not ours, it's ours to give to others and meet those needs. And I thought that was, I think that thought was shared as we looked at that subject, and I thought that was a a good point as we think about that story of God providing, but the people had to be actively involved in getting it distributed. I was going to read John 13, 1 through 20, but I think for time-wise we'll not do that right now. I might just reference a verse out of there. We're not going to read the entire John 13. I can't remember which verse it was that I wanted to look at. I don't know, I cannot seem to find it, but the thought that I wanted to get, maybe if you have a chance sometime you can read over that. God does not reward us according to how much we can do for Him, but according to how willingly we do what we can. It's not, I don't think God keeps score of how much in volume that we do for Him, how much we give, how much effort we put into it, but it's how willingly we're able to do what we can. I think that's what was, I don't know where the verse is in there, I couldn't find it right off, but that's the point that I want to leave on that, is not how much we do, but how willingly we do what we can with what we have. Hospitality also would have the aspect of humility. Ephesians 2:10. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. That's right. Okay, the verse before that says, not of works lest any man should boast, for we His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. Humility is a virtue needed for hospitality. It's not about us. It's not about building ourselves up, people recognizing us because of what we do for them, but it's because of a love and appreciation for them, of God's love for us, and us, that love flowing through us and radiating to others around us. And it does not allow, this humility will not allow someone else to feel small. It makes others feel important, and keep ourselves in the background. We will have a keen interest in others. God's gifts to us will result in service to others. Hospitality to the poor. Let's look at Luke 14, 12 through 14. And Jesus answering said unto him, It is said, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. And when the devil had ended all the temptation, he departed from him for a season. I'm sorry, Luke 14, 12 to 14. Didn't think that seemed right. I was in chapter 4. Luke 14, 12 to 14. Then said he also to them that bade him, When thou makest a dinner or a supper, call not thy friends, nor thy brethren, neither thy kinsmen, nor thy rich neighbors, lest they also bid thee again, and a recompense be made thee. But when thou makest a feast, call the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense thee, for thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. Give to a need, thou shalt be blessed. For the Christian, hospitality is not an option. We are commended to hospitality. I thought it was good here. It's easy to invite possibly people that, I guess that's the human side of it probably. Those that are well thought of, those that are well respected, maybe those that will invite us back. But here it says, don't do that. True hospitality is going to be when thou makest a feast, call those that need it. Call those that are in need. Call those that would benefit from it. and thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense to thee. And that's fine. That's not what we do it for. Our hospitality, our expression of hospitality, our expression of love to others is not based on what we get back out of it. It's based on, Jesus did that a lot in his walk on this earth. Things that he'd done, he never got rewarded for it. He never got recompense for it. He showed all this love, all this kindness, all this care to others in spite. And he went to the lowly, to the needy, people that weren't well thought of, and reached out to them. And that's what he is asking us here. And thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense thee. Also, practice of hospitality to strangers. We sometimes shirk back from that. Well, we don't know that person very well. I don't know if I want to go up and talk to him or whatever. Let's look at Hebrews 13, verse 2. Let brotherly love continue. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Be hospitable to strangers. Hospitality, welcoming the stranger and making room for others. That's what hospitality is all about. Hospitality to our enemies. Really? People we don't like? People we don't care for? Romans 12:20. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, what are we supposed to do? Run the other way? It says, no, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink, for in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. That's the way we're overcomers. People that don't care for us, people that say bad things about us, people say the things that are hurtful. What does it say here? It says, feed him, give him a drink. That's what hospitality is all about. Here again, it's more about the condition of our heart than the condition of our home or the condition of our facilities, the condition of what we have to offer. But it speaks of forgiveness. Someone hurts you, don't give him what he deserves, but befriend him. Go out of his way to make that relationship what it should be. Tell him you want to heal this relationship. Give him a helping hand. Send him a gift. Give him a smile. Those are all, I think all those things tie in with being hospitable is making our relationships what they should be. Right actions will lead to right feelings. Also, like I mentioned before, also to our hospitality to our fellow Christians, to our church family. 1 Peter 4:9. Above all things, have fervent charity among yourselves, for charity shall cover the multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. I think we can apply that to our church family, to our people that we associate with, and build a relationship by exercising hospitality. Also, Ephesians 2:19 through 22. Now therefore you no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of God, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto an holy temple in the Lord, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit. Just a continued thought on hospitality in our church family. And I come across, wasn't original with me, but I come across this thought, and I looked and I thought about it some, and I think it's something we need to to think about, when we think about hospitality, and we extend hospitality to our society around us. But I think if we're not willing to extend that same hospitality to our church family, then is it genuine, the hospitality that we extend to our society around us? I think we need to have both. I think it needs to be hospitable to our church family, feel that love and appreciation for each other and a desire to be together, and from that it'll flow out to this community around us, and we can invite them in as well. Then the last point I want to look at here is the blessings of hospitality. There is a reward mentioned for hospitality in Luke 14:12 through 14. Then said he also to him that bade him, When thou makest a dinner or a supper, call not thy friends nor thy brethren. I think I had read this before, but I want to make a different point here. Nor thy rich neighbor, lest they also bid thee again, and recompense be made thee. But when thou makest a feast, call the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense thee, for thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. Service is more important in God's kingdom than status. And we see here we're going to be blessed for that. It's not about the status, it's not about who we are, but it's more important the service that we give in God's work and God's kingdom. Instruct us not to be exclusive, but who we invite. It's God is not a respecter of persons. He loves and appreciates all. His desire is for not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. And God is no respecter of persons, and I think that should trickle down to us as we relate to others, that we're not choosy on who we want to extend this hospitality to, but we extend it to all walks of life, to every person, every individual, no matter if they line up with the way we think they should be living, or no matter what their values are. That's not what God gives us instructions in the Scripture, is to weigh this out and decide, well, we're going to do this to this person, not to this person. But I think the instructions is for us to extend the hospitality, show love and appreciation, no matter who the person or individual is. Then in closing, I want to read again. We had read it earlier, but I wanted to close with these verses in 3 John 5 through 8. Thought it was a good encouragement to close on as we think about hospitality. At least it was for me, and I have a lot of things to process by way of this subject, and a lot of areas to grow in. 3 John 5 through 8. Beloved, thou doest faithfully whatsoever thou doest to the brethren and to strangers, which have borne witness of thy charity before the church, whom if thou bring forward on their journey after a godly sort, thou shalt do well, because that for his name's sake they went forth, taking nothing of the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such, that we might be fellow helpers to the truth. John was encouraging hospitality here. And it might be, it was needful then, and I wonder, maybe it's definitely needful today, but maybe even more so than it was in that day. From the standpoint, I think over time society seems to be a little bit more individualistic. There may be more lonely people, possibly. They thought it was important then, but I think it's even more important now that we extend hospitality and meet those needs of people that are needing others, and be open to invite them into our lives, invite them into our homes, and to establish a connection, a relationship, and a friendship that would be helpful to others. That's all I have for this evening.